So it looks like the 7 goes to Joanna Hunt, who asks, since terrorists are motivated by their faith, what do you think about the moral case for not just coating our ammo with bacon grease, but filming and promoting that we are doing so? This may sound silly on the surface, but terrorists don't fear death. It means to achieve their heaven. If we promise to not just kill them, but condemn them too, could this be an answer to containing the spread of terrorist ideology? We might not be in a religious war, but they sure are. Well said. Yeah, I talked about this before a few times, obviously. And the whole point, Joanna, is if they don't know about it, it has no effect. They have to know about it. They have to be keenly aware of it. And furthermore, it has to be so publicized that it can't be hidden from them by their superiors, who are pretty much, okay, Ahmed, go strap on this suicide vest and good luck up there. Yeah, it definitely does need to be spread, and it needs to be popularized. We live in a world, and I mean this, we live in a world where we would rather die than be offensive. And you really can make that case pretty strongly. In a number of cases. I remember the San Bernardino shooter. Basically, there was somebody who said, no, the guy was real suspicious and we didn't like the looks of it, and we saw this guy walking out a bunch of times and so on, but we didn't say anything because we didn't want to be called racist. We don't want to offend people, and we don't want to do any of that. But, my feeling is if these people that we're up against are shouting death to America, death to Israel every day, I find that a little offensive too. And I find the execution of homosexuals being thrown off of top of buildings, I find that offensive, and I find treatment of women offensive, and I find their treatment of animals offensive. I found a lot about it that's offensive. So why don't we all just grow up and realize that this is no longer and has not been a popularity contest, it's a war. When you have religious fanatics on one side of the equation, that side has some very significant advantages. There's a lot of advantages to having people who are ready to die for the cause. Somewhere back a while ago now, I think I might have read it on Steve Denbest's blog on USS Clueless, but it was around the time of the invasion of Iraq, somewhere around 2003. I remember somebody reading an article that said that the suicide bomber is the weapon of the 21st century. That of all the weapon systems out there, the suicide bomber is the most effective one. It's an interesting argument. I don't know if it's true or not, but it basically is. It gives poor small groups basically the ability to have it's a homing missile. It's got a guidance mechanism, and the guidance mechanism is intelligent, and the guidance mechanism tries to deliver the warhead to the area of greatest civilian damage. So that's what we're dealing with, and I think absolutely. Now there turns out that if you've got an air force and you have drones, we wouldn't say, gee, not fair. You guys are jamming our drone signals. It's not fair that we can't use our drones because you're putting up all these countermeasures. That's what war is, and certainly they would do it and do it when they get a chance. They use these Islamic terrorists use cell phones to detonate high explosives, neither of which they can make, but they use the cell phones which are manufactured by the West to detonate high explosives, which are manufactured by the West. And this is the enemy we're fighting. So my feeling is, if you can basically, what's the word I want? It's not neuter exactly. Neutralize. If you can neutralize that threat, then I'd look at it just as like a ray that could shoot down a drone, or just basically fry the electronics, like an EMP thing. That's actually not a bad way of thinking it. Using these kind of weapons, psychological weapons like this, are really an effective way of doing business. And so, yeah, I think you absolutely ought to do it, ought to broadcast it, and you ought to be showing them being buried just being buried with pig carcasses. Now, there are people on the left who would say that is worse than killing them. They're entitled to their opinion. I don't much care. But it would work. And we know it would work because it's worked before. It worked in against the Moros in the early, and I want to say 1900, 1901, 1902 in the Philippines. There's a Islamic uprising there, and Blackjack Pershing goes over there, and he basically, I don't know what he did. He had piles of bodies, or hundreds of them dead, and he basically had 3 or 4 of them alive, or something like that. And he says, "Here we go. We're going to bury all your friends here. Now we're going to throw in the pig carcasses. You guys are free to go. Go back home and tell everybody what you saw here." And that was the end of it. It was over. It truly was. It's just like turning off a switch. When you have religious fanatics who are ready to die for paradise, and you're able to deprive them of paradise, you deprive them of their. You deprive the weapon of the guidance system. You just plain take away the weapon, and that was certainly the case in the Philippines. Frankly, it's such an unbelievable hole in their defenses. It's almost a gimme. It's almost like a gift. If we ever find that for some reason or another we ever decide to get serious about this, if I was handed these cards, I would say, "Hey man, I will." If I had to trade the disadvantages of a corrupt press as a liability for this sort of EMP pulse that deactivates the fanaticism of this pretty ragtag enemy, I would do it, and I'd make it really clear. Make it crystal clear. You're not going to the heaven you think that you are. It's an astonishing loophole, really. You'd think that the mullahs would have closed it by now, because apparently any of them can issue a fatwa, but they apparently believe this very, very seriously. Anyone who's come into contact with pork or pigs cannot enter heaven. So you put what Pershing did. You throw some pigs in there with the bodies, or you coat bullets with bacon grease or whatever. By the way, and I may have missed the point on this completely, but there is or was something that you could get in ammo stores called tactical bacon, and essentially it's Bacos, just bacon bits in a can. And I thought, what the hell is this for? Tactical bacon? Is this like if you get out there and you get really hungry or something? And I've come to realize as a guess that this is something that you basically sprinkle on people or on your bullets before you shoot them. So in any event, yeah, I think it certainly would work. It has worked, Joanne. It's historically has worked. And I think, frankly, I would rather scare these people into peace than have to kill them all. But as I said, here in America, there are worse things than killing somebody, and certainly the worst thing you can do to somebody is to judge them or offend them, especially their delicate sensibilities and religion. So, yeah, so much for that.